Let's go. It's your old pal Peace Love Music with episode 22 of Learn TA with Landy, where Landy teaches us, including myself, how the basics of trading, chart analysis, and technical analysis, I should say. And we're really excited. We are very, very fortunate to have him doing this. You know, I've learned a lot. I can look at a chart now and understand a little bit more what I'm looking at, or a lot more of what I'm looking at. And today we're getting into the nitty gritty of setting conditions. And it's very important that you guys learn how to look at a chart and read if you're going to actually be investing in some of the assets we talk about on a regular basis on DeOrganized. We tell you to do your own research. We're not providing financial advice. This is part of doing your research, doing the analysis, putting in the homework, making sure that you're making good decisions and using all the information at your disposal. And here we are, very fortunate to have the man from all the way from Langley himself. Landy, how are you today? Nice shades, by the way, my man.
Yeah, oh, thank you. I appreciate it, Peace. I'm also enjoying the very similar looking shades that you're wearing right now.
Thank you.
Some might think that we might be coming from the same place. Maybe we're streaming from the same bunker at some point, but that's for them to wonder and for us to know.
Oh, like that guy with the hair from the CIA that makes those YouTube videos?
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Handsome fellow, but he's got that missing tooth that he shows off sometimes. It's a little weird.
Yeah, never heard of him, actually. I have no idea who he is. Never seen him contracting with the CIA. Never even knew he worked there. For all I know, he could just be an influencer.
Right?
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't know anything, but I do know a little bit about charting and analysis and setting conditions for what we're seeing in price action. And this is going to be a little bit of an evolution today from what we were talking about in last week's episode. And that is kind of expanding upon, how we're thinking about evaluating where price could potentially go so that we can actually get to the point where we're setting conditions for the price to actually hit. And when it does, what we're going to possibly do if we were in the market to trade. So I think we should just jump right into it. I've actually got a little bit of analysis that we can cover, a little bit of a post-game analysis from yesterday's video, because I put out a recorded video yesterday, as I do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I was looking for conditions to be met to the downside in this case for Bitcoin, and we actually met those conditions in lower term timeframes and hit target directly. And in this case, I'm going to break down what those conditions were and how they were met and what my play was based on those conditions. And I think that should be pretty important. So yesterday
we have a fan in the chat saying good morning, and name is Full Pouch. I'm not familiar. Nice. But they are they're asking if we're ready to see dot pump. And to be honest with you, I do think that most alts are going to pump. This is just my personal expectation, not based on technical analysis, just having observed the markets and the current price run up. I do think that you're going to see a lot of stuff pump in the short term. And I'd love to see the polka dot guys get a little bit of comeback. When you do see it pump, take some profits.
They're looking okay today with a 2.8% increase on price as it stands right now, off of same area the Bitcoin was at, which is the upper first. And for that kind of stuff, we can look at some of the key levels on Bitcoin dominance, which we do see on the dailies in a strong downtrend and getting expansion to the downside. But as for this particular show, I can't comment on whether or not DOT is going to pump. It seems as though that they might have more information about what's being built there than I do, but I do know that the chart is pretty abused and that many are looking for some relief in that particular chart and have gotten some off the lows, and we'll see if it can continue. And it's going to be contingent on what we're looking at here on Bitcoin. So, and shout out to Stallion out there as well. I see that he's here hanging out. He says, Landy knows what's up. I appreciate it, brother. Sometimes I know a thing or two about a thing or two, but you'll never know what I know.
Landy does know what is up.
You'll never know what I really know. All you're going to know is what I tell you.
All we're gonna know is what you haven't signed an NFA, not an NDA for.
Yeah, pretty much. And in that case, Bitcoin hit the upper first standard deviation of our Bollinger Band set here, which is, of the four items, that is the third one that I usually talk about, but all are pretty much equally as important and all fit in together. And that's trend, support, and resistance, volatility, which the Bollinger Bands help us measure. And then, of course, those three create momentum. And we try to find the confluences between those four key points in our analysis. And those are built into basically every single school of analysis or type of technical analysis. So in this case, we had a nice higher high up here. We actually hit one of the targets that I've been calling for at $123,000. I'd been mentioning that if we saw Bitcoin above 120, that 123 was a key area to look at. And that was based on, the Bollinger Band set on some longer term timeframes. In this case, we were looking at the weekly, which is pretty much exactly where Bitcoin hit up here by the upper second standard deviation. It's a little bit hidden up here, but there's the upper second right there at the high, and that's at $123,000. So we met that condition of hitting the upper second standard deviation. And I'd mentioned yesterday in my recorded video, like, hey, you know what? If we do see Bitcoin trading below the daily here at around 118, 950, 119, be very aware of 117 to 117 and a half here by the Sunday candle. Anywhere below there, I'm looking for the upper first to get hit, and somewhere around $116,000, but could very easily dip into the 115 area. And that's actually what we did see. So what were the conditions that I was looking for to be met on lower term timeframes? Well, pretty easy, actually. So at the highs here, we can see when Bitcoin went up to make the highs, we saw that it consolidated for quite some time, actually. So we had a consolidation over here after making new highs to 118, almost 119 up here, which was also a key area. And that was something that, we were looking at once price trended up here. So we see that there was the breakout above 112 down here, right? We saw a swing above it. Conditions that need to be met to actually go on a run were to start closing above it. We got that nice uptrend here. And then we saw a high put in at the 118,909. And then we saw a bit of a downtrend. So this became the condition to meet to the upside for the potential next move up. And what we wanted to see in this case, right, was for the lower low to hold, which just so happened to come in on a nice key level right here around this high before we got a little bit of a small downtrend in the context of being in the strong half of the bands. We got compression of the bands, a move above, and then a mean reversion right back to tested as support. Price went sideways for a while and then gave us the indication that we were going to likely see a breakout. And that move occurred from this tighter range, right? So when we look at kind of where things were at the time, we can evaluate a very nice scalp from this area to the upside and the downside, right? And in this case, we can go to a higher term time frame and take a look at what was going on here. So we had the high put in. We were in expansion on the hourly. We came back and mean reverted to the basis band and then started going sideways. So we went from expansion on the bands here, very expanded from the 112 region, to compression again. And now this compression was very clear. If we started to close above the 118,909, 119 level, and then more importantly, hold it and then start to push above the upper second, which we got to close, we were going to get expansion again. So in the lower term time frames, we just check to see where things are. and then check our higher term time frame, or we can check our higher term time frame and then the lower term time frame. It's either or. I would usually suggest hourly first and then 15-minute. We just went the other way, but we're using the importance of the hourly as the factor that we need to keep track of for expansion in this case. And then we can go to the 15-minute. We can see where conditions would start to be met. So above that 118,909, we have a very clear area where we start to show that price can break above and trade above into nearly the 120 area, 119,500 there on the highs. So what is the next real big condition then? Well, the next big condition is, all right, we have a nice uptrend, right? We get the first big break up here of the 118,909. So we're showing that we can close above there, but now we're screwing around. And if we want to evaluate whether or not to get into a trade like this, well, price has proven now, as it's been up here, that it can break above in these lower term timeframes and start closing above. And it's all based off of this move off of the consolidation, low side structure within this hourly consolidation over here, right? So we can go and we can set a few more conditions in the range. And we can go to the hourly and we can say, all right, well, we have the low side structure here. And we can say, well, if we have the low side structure on the hourly, which is still a little bit of a downtrend, right? If we get anywhere close to that and start to turn around, we can then trade it back to the top side and potentially trade the breakout up. But we also have some overhead resistance from this hourly here. So we now have bracketed the range. And then we can continue to refine our conditions for what we're looking for a trade if we were looking for a trade up here. And we can see that as the hourly was going into a compression, we have the lower second standard deviation that kept getting hit, and then price kind of turning around. So as we're going into the consolidation here, as the candles are developing on the lower term timeframes, we watch the hourly to see where the closes come in and where the opportunity then presents itself. So we have here a bit of a downtrend, right? So we have a lower low, lower high, and then we immediately move into higher low swing, higher low close with a slightly higher high. And this is trendless. So what we had is a lower low, lower high trend reversal setup that failed because we got a higher low, higher high, which is a trend reversal setup. But then we went right back to lower low, lower high, and then higher low. And this is where things start to get a little dicey for many. But once we see that we have in this range here, we have this lower high, we're looking for conditions to be met to break this lower high and possibly start a new trend, right? So we have this guy here, and we can, we'll just make this purple. All right, so 117,696. And now we begin to evaluate price. So we know that, you know, kind of within this wider range between the 118,909 and the 116,632, we're just ranging around and forming a consolidation, especially on higher term timeframes. But on the hourly here, we can get a lot of trades in if we really wanted to trade it hard. But more importantly, it's about like, okay, well, we know that up here at the 118 level that we have to be aware of, you know, this high side structure to go hit these highs up here, but we're watching trend. So we have a higher high to a lower low and then a lower high trend reversal setup that came down and made a higher low on a swing, lower low on a close. So how do we know that things could potentially change? Well, it's going to be back above the 117,696. So this provides for a nice trade on a trend reversal within the range, because then we break that lower high with a nice higher high to 118,110, and then we put in a higher low. This higher low is the trend reversal setup here, but realistically, it's its potential is back to these highs, right? And then back to the actual highs of the range, right? So what we got was a nice higher low and then a move right back to the highs of the range. And then we're showing here that Bitcoin was trying to break out, even got not just 15-minute closes, but hourly closes above this range. We're also in an expansive posture. So we came from a compression. We stayed above the bullish half of the bands while putting in a higher low, and then got expansion above the upper second and even swung up above the upper third while hitting the top side of the range. So we got expansion into the top side of the range and then showed that we could close candles above it, right? So now it's about, okay, if I think that price has the potential to actually break out, not just on the hourly and close above here, but potentially go on a run again on some higher term timeframes, then what I want to see for the hourly is I want to see this last higher low close. It can be swung, but as long as it's closed above and stays in the bullish half of the bands, I'm looking for this to potentially start to break out and go on a run back to the highs 19.5 and possibly above. So once I see a setup like this start to develop, then I will take, in this case, equal low closes. And we got exactly equal low closes at 118,561 or so. And in this case, on lower term timeframes, I can evaluate this setup. So I can say inside of this setup, because I might have ignored all of this. And in fact, I think I did for scalps because it was all just in the range. I want to see it testing the highs, staying in the bullish half, get expansion, all of this rest of this stuff. So those are conditions. I want to see an uptrending structure back to the highs on expansion. And then I want to see it holding the levels. In this case, the hourly levels where it's closing inside of the original high side of the range candle structure here between the close and the high, which is over here. Hold on. That's over here, right? So we have that marked out. And in this case, we can define that very easily or set the condition, right? So off of the lows, when we see this stay in the range, we get the trend change. We get higher high, higher low, and then a run right back to the top side, showing that we can close above as well. That's where if we were already positioned at the top side, we could have stayed in a trade with a stop back below, in this case, a lower low or a higher low in this case, right? If we originally got into this trade and took it early, which there might be things on higher term timeframes that tell us no, not to take this trade early. And in fact, I believe for that, there was. We wanted to see close over close on the 4 hour above. We had one close. We want to see close over close, compression to expansion on the 4 hour. And the only way that that's going to happen is if we start closing hourlies well above the 119 level there. And in this case, what we have here is all of those conditions being met on the lower term time frame as it relates to that. So we can easily say, all right, if my original thesis was to go long, when I see this low being set, I can do a few different things. If I'm taking it on a longer term time frame, my stop might be all the way down here. But in this case, we're going to keep it local. And the conditions are going to be within a margin of error. So it's either going to be the high over here, right? The support, or it's going to be the in trend last higher high, not necessarily the last higher low. So for me, because we don't see this we're trading off of the confirmation of this guy here. Either you're trading the confirmation or you're trading the potential confirmation on lower term timeframes for the hourly, but you're evaluating the potential setup. So in this case, we can say, all right, if I want to go long off of this higher low structure, then what I can do is, where do I set my stop? Do I set it right at the low? No, I could easily be taken out. So I'd rather go back to a support structure, and I could either go to the high side structure over here because we're already within this high.
What indicator is this?
This is just the long. This is the long tool, or the long position tool.
Okay.
And this gives us a measurement tool and kind of a way to plan out a trade. So in this case, we're already inside of this high on the hourly. So if we're taking this based off of the expansion and the trend change, we're at the higher low, right up against the highs. Let's say we take the lower term time frame trade on the 15-minute, or maybe we're taking the confirmation, which is up here. It's actually above the resistance. Where would the higher low be? This obviously would be a trade that you had to wait on, but because we're already inside of this high, we have to either go to the next high side structure, which is going to be these guys over here, this double top on the hourly, or the in trend structure. I actually prefer the in trend structure myself for stops. Some people might just take the actual the highs over here. I would say that that's very likely to get hit, and it only barely got missed. So I usually go one step below, and then I like a 2-to-1 risk reward ratio, or a 2.5-to-1 risk reward ratio for lower term time frame scalps. If I think it's going to be a swing, I like to shoot for a little bit higher. I take profits along the way, though. In this case, I already had daily targets above 120 to 123. So I already knew, based on the daily, I had evaluated that if we start breaking out and closing above $120,000, we're very highly likely going to go hit $123,000, which was the weekly area of interest, right? And so my actual target is right where price ended up going. This is not always going to be the case for many. And from this, we can say like, okay, well, Landy's target was hit, but this was based on higher term time frame evaluation, right? And we ended up hitting it. And so we can make this, we can actually double click this and refine it, and say like, okay, so the exit price for this is going to be 123, so $123,000. Okay. And in this case, this is a really nice trade for someone like myself. But it's all about setting the conditions and knowing where it is that you want to put your stops, knowing where it is you want to enter. This would be a confirmation entry that gets tested. This will test someone in this trade. Now, I was already well positioned and have been. I didn't bother to take any scalps, but this is just a good example. But I know that based on the daily evaluation that I did, when price was starting to push up to 118 to 120, I already had a target above 120 to 123 based on the band setup on higher term timeframes. So I know that I'm looking for that on closes above 120 in the lower term timeframe. So I'm looking for that setup to develop, right? And that's where we start to see this setup develop. We'll say on the confirmation that gets tested. Now, what would actually give me, you can see here that because I'm using the trend, my stop is at either at the last higher high or the higher high close before the higher low trend reversal came in to actually kick off full trend and expansion up here. So I might even have a little bit more of a loose stop on this, but it's all about the risk to reward ratio. This is still well within a nice 1:4 or a risk to reward of 4.0, right? And this is a very nice trade setup, but it's all predicated on the analysis on higher term timeframes and then hunting for that on lower term timeframes if you're not already in position. In this case, this worked out very nicely, but there was a few opportunities to get in here, right? Like
how would you pull that high side number, since there is no
123
price
because okay, so
the new all-time high. So how do you know it's going to go there?
Well, I know that based on my analysis for the daily, prior to price getting here, I already had targets of 118 to 120. If it trades above 120, I'm looking from 120 to 123. Above there, 123 to 125, 125 to 128, possibly 130K. Right. So I already had those numbers well established from the daily time frame and daily price analysis. Right. So I already knew which areas I was looking for to the upside. and that's based on the daily. So it's all about how do these lower term timeframes look in terms of their potential to get there. Well, we started to see that Bitcoin could close and start to hit around the 120 level. So if I wasn't in a position, or if I wanted to take a scalp, I can start evaluating that on the lower term timeframes, the 4 hour, the 12 hour, 4 hour, 1 hour, 15 minute. In this case, we're just walking through an exercise and thought process that I'm going through. So in this case, what we see here is that the 15 minute, as it's closing up here, is also, as we're watching the 15-minute candles develop, we're seeing that those develop into hourly closures, right? And then those hourly closures will develop into 4-hour closures that then can develop into daily closures, right? So it's all about understanding across multiple time frames what it is that we're looking for and what conditions we want to see met. So if I was playing the hourly, especially because we saw the big expansion out of the prior range, what we saw was a consolidation to expansion, a trend change, and then a range form. And then we got compression. So we had a trend is your friend until the end of the trend. And then we had a trend reversal setup that then began to try. It failed with higher lows. So now we're trendless. So when the trend is unclear, everyone's in fear, I like to say. But in this case, this provides for very clear conditions, because on the hourly, if we start closing above 120, you can see that we'll move from compression within a range to expansion, right? So that's all based on what we already know from the move on the daily up to the breakout, looking for closes above 115. I said that, I was looking at 118 to 120 as a possible range. Above 120, my daily thesis was that we're going to hit between 120 and 123 as the possibility. Above 123, we're looking to 125. So in these lower term timeframes, I look at the hourly and I say, okay, we got a nice compression to expansion. We're back in compression. If we break out to the upside, the trade for me is going to be based on the daily to 123. If it breaks back down to the downside on the daily, then those conditions would have to be met with expansion below, in this case, 116, 632, but also hitting expansion. And then there's checkpoints along the way, like this high, this low is an area to take profit. Maybe this high, maybe a retest of the breakout is a third take profit zone, right? But in this case, what I was looking for was one of those two things to happen: expand to the upside or expand to the downside. And when breaking down this trade to the upside, it was pretty obvious what was going to happen here on lower term timeframes. When we got a nice trend change off of the low side structure on the 15-minute, this hourly was a lower low close down here, right? That we just looked at. This low right here was a higher low in the 15-minute. So this is saying, okay, well, where is this was a nice little uptrend off of the bottom side of the range, which it couldn't even hit, which is this area over here that hit this high. So what we're looking at is, okay, if it doesn't hit this low, then we're still trading in the range. So we need to evaluate, can we get back to the top side here? And what we saw was this uptrend fail with a trend break to the downside, lower high, higher low consolidation, a little bit of a lower high on a close with a higher high swing, saying, well, this is starting to get interesting. We have a lower high close, but we have a test up to this high and a rejection. A lot of people would have went short. I would have waited, right? Now, I didn't take any of these trades, full disclosure, because as I said, I'm already positioned. I've been positioned for a while on longer term timeframes and took scalps from the prior range that turned into swing positions. But in this case, if I was evaluating price up here because maybe I missed the move, a lot of people would have taken this rejection right here of this high side as a short, but they should have gotten immediately out of that position as soon as we closed higher than this lower high right here, because we have a lower high, higher low. We have a lower high with a higher high swing saying caution, because if it puts in a higher low and starts to close back above this lower high, close, then we're probably going to run this area again, or at least get another opportunity. We got it, and then got to close above it, thus starting a new uptrend. And then we saw that it consolidates again. We see that this uptrend continues. We get a little bit of a downtrend. So we got a lower low than this low over here. a lower high, a lower low, did not breach or get expansion below this 117,696, which is our hourly criteria for a trend change, right? Then we see a nice higher low close. Last lower high is right here. We then break it and immediately rocket to the upside on not just breaking the trend, but also going and kicking off expansion, remaining above the basis and trending right back to the top side. And this is where I would have been eyes on this area and the closes in it and above it, right? As it relates to that hourly, because now we're starting to see the hourly get expansion towards the top side of this structure, towards the 120 area. And we need to evaluate if we want to take a trade in this area. You could take it off this guy here. You could take it off this guy here. And in fact, there's even a really nice trade right here on the 15 minute. If you see the expansion to compression here, if we get rid of this, if we look here on the 15 minute, the 15 minute was giving us all of the information. And then we're looking for the hourlies to confirm on closes. So we went from expansion into the highs and above it, and then consolidated within this zone, dipped out a little bit, but we didn't drop the actual lows on a close here to actually initiate continuation of expansion. So we got a nice chop around here, a little bit of a downtrend, trend break, higher low, lower high, going trendless. And then we go lower low on expansion below the lower second and the area that we want to see held. But we also have these swings that didn't get closed below. We got two very nice swings here that are helping to define this range around our hourly. So the 15 minute has some leeway to move above and below this hourly, because we're still tracking the hourly closes in this area, right? Because we're tracking to see if the hourly can stay closed in this area. And the 15 minutes going to tell us, as each 15 minute candle closes, if that hourly is going to stay in there. So we just flip between the time frames to check. And then we can see here the 15 minute provided for some brilliant setup. So we had a lower low, failed to break below this. So in this time frame, if I was just, eyes on, let's say I didn't take this trade, I didn't feel good about it, we can go here to the low side of the range and put a little red line and say like, hey, red horizontal ray, hey Ray, if you get closed below, I'm looking for this to continue 15 minute expansion to the downside, possibly invalidating our hourly trend break structure. And then we can say, okay, well, if it stays closing inside the hourly here, especially in the yellow zone, we don't see the 15 minute crossing below and closing below, getting that expansion down, then the hourly is more likely going to close in here. And we can see that we have this lower low, lower high. We get a higher low swing, turns into a higher low close here. And then the lower high is at 118,848. It breaks. And then we get a beautiful higher low above support. And this could be the potential trade setup up here. And we can say, well, what is going to be the criteria for that? We could say that we could go long once this closes the higher low here. Let's say we went long somewhere on this swing, right? Or the next candle open or something like that. You can say, all right, well, I want to give this room on the 15 minute because we now have a trend break to higher low. And we did hit the upper second standard deviation. We're inside of the upper half of the band, so the bullish half of the bands here. And I could take it right to the swing here, but maybe I go a little bit below, right? And again, my daily criteria is that I'm looking for closes above 120. I'm looking for this to potentially go and, actually go up to $123,000 if we start to see the 15 minute result in hourly closes that result in 4-hour closes. So when looking at the 15 minute here, you can see that about $120,000 even, in fact, it is $120,000 even, gets tagged. So on this trade off of the higher low here, after, maybe it closes, sets the higher low, you get into position. I put my stop below the last lower low in this case from the trend change. and just, I could put it down there. If it gets hit, it gets hit. It's also around the lower second standard deviation, slightly below it. I know that, hey, at 120, I might want to take some profits on this because that is 118 to 120 was part of my daily analysis. And we hadn't previously seen 120 get hit. Now, that's not a great risk to reward trade, but that's just the first take profit. I like to take profit in 3 parts or 4 parts. So I'll usually do 3 take profits or 3 TPs, or I'll do a 4 TP. In this case, I probably would have went the 4 TP route and taken enough off the trade that if it shot right back down and took me out, I'm break even. That's likely where I would have been in this trade. But realistically, I'm looking for this to eventually go up and hit $123,000, right? Which was what we ended up getting. That's never a guarantee, but I would be taking profit along the way. And that's where, in this case, we saw the higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, consolidation, higher high, and then we start to get a higher low, lower high. Trend starts to shift again. So there was nothing in here in this trade. I could have taken it all the way up because there's no structural break as I'm watching, right? There's no potential ambiguity in terms of trend. So I could ride the trend right through, take my profits initially at 120, and then I could just ride it through, and then I could take profits when I start to see danger, danger, danger. In this case, I likely would have taken profits at 123 because it got hit perfectly, and that was part of my daily thesis. But who knows? Maybe I would have gotten greedy and said, maybe it can go for 125. So what I could end up doing is saying, oh, well, in this case, once I see higher high or higher low, higher high, higher low, lower high, if I see this higher low get broken, we now have a trend reversal set up on our hands. I can axe this trade here once it breaks down. So we can potentially say like, okay, I can take it to the breakdown of this higher low structure. Why is this not, somewhere around the actual breakdown candle close? So it was somewhere around here on the close open when it broke below that low. And now that's a trade that I could have taken and basically a 3-to-1 ratio. And it's all based on trend, support and resistance, volatility. And then, what we didn't talk about is momentum. So we can even check where momentum was in some of these key areas. So when we were looking at this consolidation here, there's a few areas where we can check momentum and along the way.
If all of the other stuff, if the setup is there, but momentum is telling you no, does that change your thesis?
I'll show you how I fit it in. Yeah, yeah, because it absolutely can. So here's the high. Here's a lower low structure. Here's a high. Here's a lower low structure. Right? So where was momentum here? And then where was momentum off of this higher low? So we've got like 3 points to look at here for momentum. But again, the first 3 create momentum. So trend, support and resistance, and volatility create momentum. So we're using this as a confluent area of interest. So we see that momentum actually peaked back here and made a lower high when this high was in. We actually didn't get this high in until many candles later. Momentum pointed down. We have momentum pointed down, but we're starting to put in a higher, lower high, higher low swing to higher highs. We see the shift in momentum. We see a higher high. We see the high put in. Momentum begins to shift off of the lows. We know that momentum is still pointed down, but if we don't meet the criteria of closing below our red line there, if it holds it, we're looking for a potential momentum shift. We started to get that as we broke out of the lower high here. So what we got here was momentum was still pointed down, saying that, hey, we do have to be cautious that we could start to see closes below our red line there, initiating further expansion while breaking this local consolidation structure on the 15-minute to the downside, losing the hourly high side structure as well. Likely going to get that expansion down to, 115, 116 or something, our purple line that's down there somewhere. But as it starts to hold up here, we see the lower high gets put in after this low is set. We can look at, okay, well, and if this comes back down, does it still hold this area? It does in higher low fashion. And as it starts to hold this in higher low fashion, which is right about here on the close, we see momentum shifted at the same time to the upside here. And now we're looking for the conditions to be met to break the downtrend. And we got that with this nice big uptrend. And then we can say, okay, we've got a potential trend shift here, but I can easily ignore this right here, this downtick after this higher highs put in, because we're evaluating if we're going to get higher low structure. And we're above the overhead resistance now. We're in some local resistance, but we're above the hourly overhead resistance. So we can say, okay, if this sets a higher low, I can take a chance on this trade. I just have to put my stop back below the lower low here. And that's where we can see that momentum can stay in the overbought zone. That's typically where we see the biggest moves. So it can stay overbought for longer than people can stay patient. And then it can stay oversold for longer than people can stay patient as well. That's where momentum is something that you're just using as a confluent indicator. It's not something to be taken in and of itself. It's to be weaved into your conditions that you're setting. Because we had a trend break to the upside, we had momentum shift with it, even though the higher high came in as it relates to this last downtrend. Even though a higher high came in and momentum shifted, we're above an area of resistance that we want to see hold as support. So it has room to hold as support. So that's a condition. We want to see a higher low. We got the higher low condition met. So now we need to see this higher low after confirmation, take out the higher high to confirm the trend reversal setup. And then, of course, the next condition is close above the highs and the upper second to get expansion. So these are concepts that I'm introing you to in an absolute deluge of information, because these are things that we're going to break down piece by piece in the coming episodes. Because I want to intro this concept to you, because now I'm utilizing the full breadth of my technical analysis across trend, support and resistance, volatility, and momentum. And I'm applying it in very specific ways on the price chart to evaluate price action and where it's potentially going to go by setting conditions based off of multiple time frames, and then weaving that into how I can look for those setups to start to present themselves in lower term time frames as it relates to the higher term time frames. So one, we started with a daily thesis. The daily thesis that I already had established was breakout above 112. We're looking 112 to 115. If we start seeing daily closes above 115, that target's raised to 118 to 120. Above 120, targets raised from 120 to 123. Potential above 123 is 125. Check that. If we get that, then I'm looking 128 to 130. Right? So we already know what our daily thesis is, and everything in the lower term timeframes is based off of that daily thesis. So you're looking to confirm or deny those particular conditions being set, and those are that thesis rather, right? You're looking to confirm or invalidate rather that thesis. And then what you're looking for is, if confirmed and it meets the confirmation criteria for you in those lower term timeframes, what are you doing to position yourself to take advantage of that? And it gets complex very quickly, which is why for the past 21 episodes prior to this, I've been hammering on purely the TA, understanding trend, understanding support and resistance, understanding volatility, and understanding momentum. You have to have that drilled into your skull so that you can start laying out the conditions and invalidation levels. So, we talked a lot about invalidating a thesis last week, and that's all based on conditions. So this is just an evolution of that. How am I setting conditions? Why am I setting them here? What am I looking for? What's going to confirm or what is going to invalidate? and we're going to hammer on this for probably a couple weeks, and then we're going to get into potential trade setups from here, right? Like, I'll give you a preview of a potential trade setup. On higher term timeframes, we came down and we actually met conditions to the downside here, right? We met conditions to the downside to meet that upper first standard deviation on the daily. This is now likely going to be a high set, but we've met the initial conditions to the downside. So what would the conditions for me look like for it to get a further correction? Well, if we start closing below the upper first here, which would be dropping today's low at 115,697, then I'd be looking for the potential for Bitcoin to come back and test the breakout 112 to somewhere around 110, where we have that basis band. So we have an initial range to the downside, and some might even extend that down to 109 on the close here. But that's going to be the initial conditions or thesis on the daily. So what's going to validate or invalidate that? Well, the 4 hour would be a good one to look at. The 4 hour has a low side structure, so we can get rid of some of the stuff that we did earlier for the more local range there. And we can kind of end with this, right? So that you can see what it is that I'm looking for this to potentially break down further. So you see that up here, we have this beautiful higher low structure, right? Higher high, higher low, that then got expansion to the upside. We got a higher low, got a little bit of a lower high, higher low, and then a higher high, right? And now we're back to this higher low consolidation structure. We have swung below it in the 4 hour, right? And we can now define this area on the 4 hour and say, okay, what are some of the conditions that I'd be looking for on the 4 hour? And then start relating that to the hourly. So in this case, we can go with yellow, or we can go with white. We can go with white. And we can see that we have shown that price can close outside of the bottom side of the structure, right? But it's closing right back in. So we can put a red line at the bottom there, because we know two things about this 4 hour swing low down here, which is a lower low. So we do have a trend break, right? We know that that's the daily upper first standard deviation right there. Now, we can make a few conditions in order to reverse this trend or make this lower low an outlier or to nullify the trend break. What we need to see is we need to actually see price come all the way back to the top side and take out $123,000, right? So we know that from this current look. And how would it actually set a low? In this case, you're going to see some people will say, well, it's 117,761. For me personally, I need to see this high, which is also around the closing high side structure up here, this high at 118,464 taken out to set this lower low, right? So there's a condition that needs to be met to the upside to actually set the low for this 4 hour candle structure, for me personally, right? If it doesn't set the low, it's still biased to the downside. Just because it's grabbing onto the bottom side of this range over here doesn't mean too much to me. And some people will give it even some more room. They might even take the bottom side of this range as this 4 hour close up here to this 4 hour closing swing low, because this was a 4 hour closing higher low. So some might actually expand this a little bit up here. And I would say, I don't disagree with that. I think that that's a safe play. And you can see that Bitcoin deviated the range, right? And in order for this to be a deviation of this trend, which had, consolidation, a little bit of a lower high swing and close right into a higher low and then higher high. Well, in order for this to be a deviation lower low, it's got to close all the way back up here. That might be a lower likelihood, especially because we're not in a compression like we were back here. We're actually in a bit of a range setup that possibly could be expanding range. So Continuation to the downside, we have to look for that on closes below this little range low up here. And that's going to be around 116,632. And then we're looking right here squarely at the bottom side of our swing structure from 116.3 to the actual 115,697, right? If we start to break below there, we have the lower second standard deviation around 115,200 down here. And if we begin to close below it, that's where we're going to initiate a more expansive move down to test things, possibly down to the 110 to 112 area down here. And that's where things can, and that's, as long as we're not setting the low, that's a potential, right? So that's the thesis right now based on the daily, but this is a very important daily. So if we drop that, we know that we're dropping the daily upper first. We know that the daily basis band is right here in the middle of this zone. And I'll flip back to the daily real quick. We'll have to do some finagling, but you see the daily basis band is right in the middle of this zone, which is the high side structure. This would be a retest of the breakout. We know that if we drop the upper first, this is a very important area on the daily, whether it's going to be more towards the 112 or more towards the 110, doesn't really matter. We would prefer to see closes above the basis, but the basis is right in here. So from a volatility standpoint, that's what we need to look for. And from the 4-hour standpoint, we'll know on closes below 115,700 or so that we're at least going to test down further, possibly to the lower second at 115 even, or maybe even lower towards the 113, 114 area by the lower third if it begins to expand. If it closes anywhere below the lower second, as it stands right now, that would be expansion to the downside into that area. So we have to be very aware of it. But if we do set the low on closes above 118,464, then we're looking for a few different things here. We're looking for the potential, as long as this lower low holds, that we could potentially see a trend reversal setup, or for this lower low to become a deviation. What would that look like? Well, that would look something like this. That's where we have the trend break, right? Lower low. If we set the low, we're either going to set this as a deviation and go and take out the high, right? But more likely, we're looking for something like a lower high. Maybe it comes back up to like 120, right? And then potentially tries to come down and set higher low equal low structure. And then we have a new condition. So set the low, you have a lower high. If we get a trend reversal set up on the 4-hour, then we have to take out this high to confirm that trend reversal setup. So trend reversal setup could potentially be, if it sets the low, and only if it sets the low, more likely looking for lower highs. This is just an example at like maybe 120. And then if it does that, it's still, that's a trend reversal to the downside setup. But if we look for the possibility that it holds this low, then we look for a trend reversal right back to the upside. Condition that needs to be met would be somewhere around 120 to confirm that. Trend reversal setup would become a trend reversal confirmation, potentially pointing higher. Or, like I said, we look for just the straight up deviation of trend, which could be a potential as well. Or we just look for the continuation of this being confirmed as a downtrend on any break below this lower low. So we have a trend break. We look for first a potential lower high or a deviation of trend, and it just takes out the top side. That's the first thing we look for. And we gauge that based on whether or not this is just going to continue down or set the low here. That lower high could result in a trend shift. That is a trend reversal setup. Shorts will come in. If they start closing below the lower low, we have a downtrend, possibly on expansion, hitting some downside targets. Or the other way to play that out is a potential higher low that then takes out the lower high, trend reversal setup back to the upside. Right? So we have different scenarios that we have to be aware of as it relates to trend. And that is where things do get complex, but if you're setting the conditions and watching them, it actually becomes very, very simple over time.
It actually makes a lot of sense.
I hope so. Sometimes I talk about it and I am just, I've seen it.
It is a mountain of
25
data.
years, 25 years. So my eyes immediately go to what setups I'd be evaluating, and to draw it out and illustrate it for you can sometimes my words can get a little complex, but I'm glad that you think that makes sense. So up here right now, as it stands in this current moment, we don't have a low set. So it's more biased to the downside. And until we see a low set, in this case above 118, 464, 470 area, I don't even consider a low set. So it's more biased to the downside. So that's it. I mean, the first condition is to set.
Right. We don't even have a low set yet.
Nope.
Likely with where things are on the day, kind of feels like it would take a lot to get it to go set a new high, like a higher high from here.
Yeah, it doesn't look likely from the current setup.
So
doesn't mean that it can't happen.
High, but likely it could be a lower high and then a equal or higher low, and then or something like that. But it probably, I feel like it's probably going to want to test back to that 12K before it continues.
So, from here, right, we could potentially see something like, this occur, right? We could potentially see that's absolutely in the cards, right? A little bit of a W formation, lower high, higher low, higher high, which would be, the trend reversal setup to take would be the next higher low. And then you're getting that confirmation above a lower high. But as it stands right now, there is no low set. So the bias is to the downside, right? So we know that we haven't even met the first criteria of setting a low, right? So the first criteria and first condition is set the low. Wherever the next lower high comes in, whether it's a lower high or a higher high, then we can evaluate the trend reversal setup, because it's still a trend break. And if the only way that it's going to become a new trend, there's only one way to become a new trend, and that is to set a higher low that takes out a lower high or a higher high, right? So
it might be reasonable to assume with where things are today, if you were, and because the trend is technically slightly unclear, or
it is unclear. This is just a trend break as it stands right now.
There's not enough information to make a trade today. If you you might lean towards the downside, because that's actually where it leans right now.
Mm-hmm. The actual immediate take is that, and this is the immediate take, is that, okay, we have a trend break, so it hasn't set the low yet, so the bias is still just down. But if we do set a low, then the actual bias right now is to look for a lower high, no matter what, right? The invalidation would be back above the higher high. So the next move, wherever this lower low is set, no matter if it's here or lower, would be a lower high, right? And then off of that lower high, that is a bearish trend reversal setup, right? So that's a bear setup, meaning you got a lower high. If you're looking for a trend shift, then you're looking for it to take out the lower low down here, right? So you're looking for this to continue. If you're bearish, lower low, invalidation of that thesis is back above your lower high, right? Because that would be a trend break.
Right, but you don't even have that until you set a lower.
Set the low.
You haven't you haven't even set the low. Assuming we're going to set a low here, you'd still then have to set the lower high.
Yeah. So
you can actually act on that trend, really.
Yeah. Or it's just, this becomes a lower low to higher high. But even if this became a lower low, right, to a higher high, let's say it goes up and it makes a higher high. Sure, you could trade it in lower term timeframes. You'll have plenty of information to do that, right? So let's say that it does something like that. This becomes a deviation lower low. Well, that's a higher high to lower low to higher high. That's not trend. That's not a trending structure. So we would still, in that case, need to be looking for a
higher low.
A higher low.
Hopefully.
And that would be your trend reversal setup.
Higher or equal low.
Higher or equal low. Yes, exactly. And then the confirmation be back above the new higher high. That just so happened to be at 125 even. I didn't mean to draw that, but which is one of the targets above 123. But that's where we would look for the higher low setup if that were to play. I would say that this kind of a move is less likely, but not out of the question. It's just less likely.
Right. Well, there's so many different macro conditions that could send things in a direction right now.
Yes.
So you can't just guess. You have to wait and see what happens.
Yes. So right now, as we can see, price is hunting the low again in lower term timeframes. We can actually get a little bit of a bias for this, right? By looking at the 15-minute. So we have the nice little consolidation,
right?
Uptrend, right? So we had a nice little uptrend. We hit that 118,464, which is the conditions that need to be met to close the 4-hour low right now. But then the 15-minute broke down and made a lower low, lower high, set a higher low. So it's a little unclear. Lower high came in. Now it's testing right back to the low. So when we see the higher low, lower high is the trend reversal setup. On closes back below the lower low. So now we have a trend reversal setup confirmation, and we need to see we have a trend reversal setup off the lower high, and we already broke below the higher low. So we got a trend break plus the reversal, confirmation of trend reversal, and continuation is going to be, look at that, right below the lower second standard deviation, which just so happens to be the low so far today. So what we know is if price begins to close below this low, that 115,697, that will also be on expansion. And then we can start looking down to the lower third. Price replace bands as it's expanding, and that's 115K. That's still well within my daily analysis anyway, which, yesterday I said 116, you want to see daily closes above the upper first, but can it go down to 115? Sure. Give it some room for a deviation of the upper first, but realistically, more bias to go test, below 115, more bias to go test 110 to 112.
I dig it. This actually been, I thought we were going to have a quick 30-minute show. It's been an hour and 10 minutes, and it's been great stuff. I actually really appreciate all of this today, man.
Yeah, brother. I love doing this. This is my passion. I literally do it every day.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear me on Spaces.
You provide a ton of value for, I know a lot of people are probably watching your Monday, Wednesday, Friday analysis so that they can cheat and not do the analysis themselves. And while I'm sure that there's a lot of people that can actually use that information well without having to get into the nitty-gritty, they're going to be better served. They'll understand it better. They'll make better decisions on the analysis you're providing if they know how to do this.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's something that I know there's a bunch of people that are working their way through the Learn TA with Landy's series on DeOrganized for the playlist on the YouTube channel. You know what I think might be good for some of those folks who are here today is if we can link that underneath today's video. I reposted today's video as well. And
playlist from YouTube.
Yeah, the YouTube playlist, because I know that there's some people that are like, wait, he does this? He does this analysis thing and he's teaching it? Wait, what? Really? Yeah.
Every week.
Been doing it for a while. We've missed a few weeks here and there.
All right. So not every week, but most weeks. if you take the whole collection of weeks, more often than not, the preponderance of evidence says.
Exactly. Yeah. We've been doing this in peace. I'm really I'm thrilled that you are the gentleman hosting this for me. I really do appreciate it. Much love to you, and big shout out to you and DeOrganized Media. You guys are doing such a great job. Like you guys are killing it, and you're killing it specifically as well.
Well, I appreciate all of that, man, because we put a lot of work in here. We've gotten tremendous support from the community, from the ecosystem, from people like you right from the beginning. And so it makes it easier to do, but appreciate getting some recognition. We get a lot of it, by the way. I try to deflect as much as I can, but coming from you, it actually really means, coming from everybody, anyone, it means a lot. But I really do appreciate it. I'm not good at taking compliments.
Well, but got a game recognizes game. You're out here building. You're doing something fantastic, and without yourself and many others, obviously, that have played a very big role. There's I probably wouldn't be doing this stuff, right? I would probably just trading, not going to spaces, not going to live streams. But you guys put a fire under my ass to go and do it and start teaching people about this stuff again. So I'm thankful to you for that.
Well, I love that. That was the best thing I've heard all day, and I really appreciate that, because honestly, if I had a small hand in your actually expanding this to more people and spreading more knowledge, then I consider that's a huge accomplishment. So I appreciate that, hearing that in some way we help motivate you to do this. Yeah. And just your regular dailies, your dailies. Huge value for our ecosystem, man, for real.
Yep. And I'll keep trying to deliver for as long as I possibly can. So let's keep growing this thing. Let's keep educating people, and basically let's just keep doing what we're doing. And I think we'll be good. And the more people that see this kind of stuff will also start to get a better understanding what's going on, not just about TA, but also in various ecosystems like stacks.
Right on. I'm actually I'm going to have to figure out how to drop that playlist link. I know I can share it. I know I can grab it. I think because I added this video while it's still live, it's not giving me the link to share the playlist. I'm not sure.
Oh, good. Okay. We can just post it up later.
Yeah, I'll throw as soon as I can figure out how to grab the playlist link again. I will absolutely do that. And guys, it is. You know what? I need to actually go through and rewatch some of these videos myself, because I know there are definitely some things that I probably could brush up on and just go back and watch it while I'm doing some other stuff, and just hear it and listen out for some keywords that will hey, this is what this is the piece I'm missing from that. Oh, I missed that part. Now I understand why we do this a little bit better. Mm-hmm. It always helps to do. But I do think it also just literally today we actually have a DeOrganized Discord channel now, Discord server. So I might be able to actually I might even just make a whole channel just for people to find these episodes and take these lessons.
Mm-hmm. Don't mind me. I'm messing with a potential scammer in my DMs now.
Oh,
they're. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I love your page and the way you engage with the community. What community? I thought I'd ask if you'd be interested in working as our international community manager for our project. Peace, what an opportunity.
International community manager.
Yeah, not just a community manager even words. But it's international.
I'm going to pay you $400 a week for 5 hours of work, whatever hours you want to work.
Well, let's see. It's a really amazing role with great pay and a good team. I think you'd be an amazing match. I can let you know more about the pay and the role. If it's something you might have time for. I said, not interested. Thanks. I completely understand. It's a shame based on your X profile. You seem like a knowledgeable and wise person.
That's
No, with the
definitely the
hashtag
approach I
symbol.
would take if I wanted you to be my community manager. I
You
would
know?
approach you in DMs on X.
Yes, exactly. Just follow you and immediately start DMing bullshit. With a very clearly botted account, no common followers, and a bunch of reposts on your own account. No worries at all. I completely understand. Life can be hectic. Based on your X activity, I thought you'd be a great addition to our team. Well, they
So
sound disappointed. I
there's
think I,
always a
I think
Telegram.
I've disappointed them. Peace.
Sam, I'm sure you disappointed them, Landy, because to be honest with you, not only would you be an excellent international community manager for our Discord channel, and if you want that role, it's yours for sure, but also because you come off as somebody who might have a sizable wallet with which to loot.
Yes, yes. I was just waiting for the freaking fake Teams meeting link to come through at this point. That's what I was waiting for.
You know what I've been getting on occasion is I'll get a legitimate Calendly link.
Oh, yeah.
And because I check the links to make, I'll copy the link and I'll drop it into a link checker to see if it's valid. And it's like, oh my God, this is a real Calendly. These guys are setting up a meeting so that they can then screw me some other way. Like how that's weird. I want to ask because a couple minutes ago, Sam, our good buddy Sam, the liberal thumb, is asking, is this a buying point? And I think he's being facetious, but I'm not positive.
I can't tell. I think he would know just to go back and look at the video. Sam,
But,
I have to suggest that you watch this particular live stream from the beginning, and you'll get my thoughts on just a few minutes ago of what I'm looking for.
Yes, and the Italian stallion Rocky Balboa himself also says that scammers are relentless in this space, and you got to mess with them. It's actually like if I had an endless supply of money and I didn't have to do anything to generate income at all, I would probably do a lot of what I do now, but there would be more trolling, much more. Yeah,
I would be doing a lot more trolling, but I've been too busy.
Yeah, it would be you think I'm entertaining just doing these shows. Some of my favorite times was just the old CBS Sportsline.com and ESPN chat boards and messing with people about their favorite sports teams.
Oh boy. Don't get me started on sports stuff, man. I'm an injured Bills fan. My
I appreciate the Bills. When in my formative years, when I was really coming on to football, was when they were, they won the AFC Championship 4 years in a row. You know that. So
yes, you notice you said something very key there, Peace. Won the AFC Championship 4 years in a row, which means that they got to the Super Bowl and lost 4 years in a row. At the prime point in my fucking childhood, destroyed me, especially living in New York with two other New York teams.
Yeah, I feel I'm a Pats fan. Don't hate me. I inherited it, just kind of product of my environment. I love the Patriots. I know what we were a terrible team, but before we became awesome, we were the laughing stock of the NFL for a long, long time. And it's amazing. How having had experience, my kids don't understand. Well, they have a little bit of an understanding now over the last couple of years, but.
You're like, hey, remember that guy that went to the Bucks and won a Super Bowl? He won a bunch of them for us too. Remember that?
Yeah, that was hard to watch too because there was no reason for them to let him leave and go somewhere else. And I don't blame him for not wanting to stick around for a couple of years on a rebuild for nothing. But it is what it is. But I also feel like my kids just. This is actually my almost 26-year-old son. He's my third oldest. When he was about 4 or maybe just 5, and the other kids had all gone to see Polar Express with school, and I was taking him himself, and we stopped at the convenience store or the pharmacy to get some candy to go in, because obviously I'm not going to pay full price. Look at me. Yeah, I'm going to pay.
Yeah.
I'm not going and paying that. Just won't do it. But there's a picture of Tom Brady, like some kind of Tom Brady something or other at the checkout.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, he said something about it, and the lady goes, "Oh, do you like Tom Brady?" And he goes, no way, because he plays for the Yankees. That's how ingrained the Yankee hate is in my area. We are, well, not entirely either. My whole father, like the Italian half, all Yankees fans.
Yeah,
Irish half, all
sounds
Reds.
about right.
Yeah. So, but at least I was like, well, at least he has his team allegiance right.
He's got the team allegiance right. Yeah, but that's our guy. That's our guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? After watching Brady and the Pats stomp the Bills for year after year, after losing 4 Super Bowls, and then entering the Bledsoe era, and then the Brady era, and then Bledsoe comes over to the Bills, and we're like, maybe we got a shot against the new guy. No, we had no shot.
First game, that first game, you guys did well when you took Lawyer Malloy from us right before the end of preseason.
Oh shit!
You smacked us. It was like the last time until like very recently, actually.
Yeah, until just the past, and you guys even remained competitive at post Brady for a little bit there. Now post Belichick, I don't know.
They're going to be much improved this year, brother.
Yeah,
I would not be surprised if they won the division. I know that's a big reach. I'm not expecting that to happen, but I'm not saying based on the moves they've made, could absolutely be. A Bears fan, well, good luck. Oh, Caleb's all right.
Yeah, no, he's all right. Look, they have potential to make some noise in the division. I would say that they got to come out the gate hot, and now the Bills are the team to beat. I mean, I'm obviously biased.
The Bills are the team. The Bills should win the division.
Should, yeah.
Josh Allen he might be the best quarterback in the league, actually, in my opinion.
I'm not going to argue against that at all. I think that he's a generational quarterback that needs to win the Super Bowl to solidify it.
But we got his number 1 receiver now, and Matt Collins.
I'm sorry. The number 1 receiver, or the number 1 whiner.
Oh,
that dude is a baby. Let's see.
You can't be that guy. There's no number 1 wideout that's not a prima donna.
That's true. That's very true.
And we haven't had one on our team. Well, we had AB for a little while. They were trying to keep Brady happy. They brought him in. Mm-hmm. AB slept with his wife, and they got rid of him.
Yeah. That's so wild. What a wild.
Because at the time it just seemed like funny rumors, but
and what's AB doing now? I'm gonna launch a token. It's gonna be my official token. 99 tokens later, as he's fucking dealing with bankruptcy and everything else. Wow, what a wild world.
They're all head cases. They make so much money to play a game too, but it pales in comparison to what the owners actually make. It's nuts.
It does, yeah. Well, Peace, I think football talk, we should probably wrap it here.
Wraps it up. It didn't go in the way we thought it was going to go, but it was still interesting and a little bit off topic.
Yeah, it was almost going to go the other direction. I was going to bring it up, but I think this was a more enjoyable conversation than the other one.
Probably for the listeners. Probably
for the listeners, for sure.
It would have probably gotten a little too heavy. We might have made people feel bad about things, and we don't want to do that. The future is so bright in our ecosystem, guys. We have to wear shades. Okay.
Yes, exactly. We have to be incognito. And shout out to the Italian stallion there. He's a Bears fan, so he understands the Pain Olympics very well.
Yes. Although to be honest with you, I'm not a hater. I love football, number 1, and so I don't want to hate anybody. But yeah, most franchises over a long length of time. Like some of my favorite people are Lions fans. And if you know anything about the NFL, you understand.
Yes. Yeah. You know what?
He has it worse.
It's honestly with the Chiefs getting knocked off last year, I'm hoping that there's an end to the Pain Olympics for most. We'll see how that pans out the rest of this year. Obviously, they're a contender as long as they have Patty Mahomes over there, Kermit the Frog in the flesh.
Yeah, he's magic. He gets a lot of favorable treatment, but he's still an amazing quarterback. Like what he can do is nuts.
He is insane. You know, there's a few quarterbacks in the league. Obviously, I put Josh Allen right up there with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes obviously gets the edge because he's got the rings. But in terms of talent, there's a lot of like really exciting talent in the NFL. I don't really hate on any team except the Dolphins. I hate the Dolphins. Fuck the Dolphins.
Oh, Tua sucks too. I hate the Dolphins. I don't hate anybody, but
I like Tua. I like Tua. Tua is like risking his entire life.
Taking way too many shots. Like they should not. I'm afraid every time he gets hit.
Yeah, and every time he plays the Bills, he gets hit and has a freaking concussion. Holy shit. I feel like we're gonna accidentally kill that guy, and then the Bills will become the villains.
Oh, that's a good role. Sometimes that helps.
Well, look, you know,
we can talk about this all day, man.
Yeah, we could. There is a Dallas Cowboys fan out there, and he likes to refer to the Dallas Cowboys as America's team, but that's been shifting towards the Bills in recent years, especially in their Chiefs matchups. So, we stole the crown.
There's one Jerry red, white, and blue. And
yeah,
I'm not talking about the Giants.
Yeah, about the Giants, the New Jersey Giants. How about those New Jersey Jets? Oh, yeah, you know, Rutherford Stadium. How about you play in New York to claim New York? Come on. All right, peace. This has been great. I had a lot of fun as always.
Thank you, Landy. Much appreciated. I will definitely get that link to that playlist up and circulated to get it out to our viewership. Always a pleasure, my man. Guys, by the way, the Landy bands are key to being able to get the right levels and everything. So go over to Landy's page on X. It's at Crypto Landy. The link for Landy bands is there. It's a free indicator. All you have to do is favorite it on TradingView. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Landy drops videos showing you analysis on Bitcoin charts and Bitcoin pricing. 3 times a week, guys. So follow the dude if you're not. And Landy, thank you very much, man. You have a great day. I am Peace, Love, Music. This is Crypto Landy. We are DeOrganized Media. Y'all have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. Peace out.